You guys want me to give you like my honest response on Super Straight? All right, let me just rewatch this. Hold on.
Yo guys, I made a new sexuality now, actually. It's called super straight, okay? Since straight people, or straight men as myself, I get called transphobic because I wouldn't date a trans woman. You know, they're like, would you date a trans woman? I'm like, no, why? That's a female. No, like, that's not a real woman to me. Like, I want real woman. No, you're just transphobic. So now, I'm super straight. I only date the opposite gender, women, that are born women. So you can't say I'm transphobic now because that's just my sexuality, you know?
Okay. Okay. So this is the thing about the super straight. The only thing I disagree with is, well, actually, I don't necessarily disagree. So he says trans women aren't real women to me, right? I think trans women are real women. He doesn't think trans women are real women. That's a reasonable thing to think. Okay. It's reasonable, and specifically because, like, when it comes down to it, being trans is like very much about like your it's very much about your perception of yourself and trying to express that perception to society. But other people have perceptions of you. And so if you look at a trans woman and say, you know, I still see your sex within you, I think that that's fair, and then that's reasonable, and it's a reasonable reason to not date somebody. Moving on from that, the funniest part about this is this idea of being super straight and trying to like jokingly insert it into the LGBTQ community as a way of saying, hey, I've now marginalized myself, so leave me alone. And it's very funny. It's actually very funny. I thought that this was I thought it was funny. It's funny. It's clever and it's funny. So, you know, I'm just being honest with you.
Would you ever date a trans woman? Of course not. I'm super straight, which means I only date women who are biologically born women. Well, we may not be biological women, but we're still real women. Not to me. And since you guys want to lump yourselves in with real women, I think it's only fair for me to create a sexuality centered around my specific interest in biological females. What? You can't just make a sexuality centered around a specific preference out of nowhere? Yes, I can. Well, that still makes you transphobic for not acknowledging trans women. Okay. No, you're a monster. A monster! Would you ever date a trans...
It's funny because like that, see, that's the very interesting thing about this is honestly, this is very good commentary on super straight, right? And the specific thing that gets me out of this one, it very specifically is the not giving a shit if you're called transphobic. And the reason I say that is because like what happens here is we're constantly shifting the goalpost of what transphobic is. I think that if you're somebody that accepts trans people in society and advocates for their rights, you're not transphobic. But you don't have to sleep with a trans person or be attracted to trans people to not be transphobic. And so what's happening is we're shifting as a society. And most trans people, I would argue, are fine with not wanting to date. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. It doesn't even fucking matter. Right? But like, I would argue that a lot of trans people would be like, yeah, I understand if you wouldn't want to date me because I'm trans. And I think that a lot of like toxic progressive people are like just trying to like shame everybody out of everywhere. Like, you're removing the nuance from it. I get it. Trans women are women, but some people still see them as men to an extent. And that's okay. That doesn't mean that they're propagating hatred against that person. That's just their mental perception of trans people. And like, that's what life is about. Everybody's perceptions of one another. As we move forward, will that change? I'm sure it will. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now, trans women might be seen 100% as women, and straight people may actually be attracted, or like fully straight people, or however you want to phrase it, may actually be attracted to trans people, right? My perspective is like, you know, you might be a little bit gay if you want to date a trans woman, right? Like, most trans women aren't passable. You know, they're very there's a difference between gender expression and then gender identity. So they may identify as a woman, but their expression to society may be a little more masculine, especially in the ways that men are masculine, right? And that might make you a little gay. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. I mean, I don't know. That's me personally. I think that if you'll go down on a wee-wee, that's a little gay, regardless of whether it's a boy or a girl's wee-wee, right? Now, that might change in the future, and that's totally fine. Like, I think that one of the biggest misconceptions about when it comes to people dealing with trans people or dating trans people or wanting to sexually interact with them or physically is that, like, most people like myself, we don't care what your perspective is. I'm not advocating for it to be like totally gay. Like, oh wow, you're so gay. Like, I'm not gonna have like a public rally advocating for trans women being it's gay. Like, do I personally think it might be a little like, yeah, sure. I also don't put a lot of value into being gay or straight. I mean, it's like, who cares? I don't like micro-labeling either. But like, we're not advocating. We're not advocating for people to like believe us. It's just like, hey, this is my perspective. Leave me the fuck alone. Meanwhile, the other perspective is like, no, you have to agree with us or you're transphobic. And we're getting to a point now where people are going to be very comfortable with getting called bigoted. Well, that makes me transphobic because I think that it's like a trans woman and a cis woman is different because of their biology. Well, now, okay, I'm transphobic. And now the word loses its meaning and people stop caring. That's just kind of the honest truth.